I never imagined that planning my daughter's wedding would become the most difficult battle I had ever fought as a mother. Emma was finally happy engaged to the love of her life, and we were choosing flowers when my phone rang. It was my mother, and her voice carried that familiar tone that meant trouble. She asked me to sit down before she spoke. What she said next would shatter our peaceful world and force me to choose between family loyalty and protecting my daughter from the man who had destroyed her childhood. The wedding was supposed to be about joy and new beginnings. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. And buckle up, because this story will take you through the most challenging decision I ever had to make as a mother protecting her daughter. My name is Sabrina, and I am 34 years old. For the past 10 years, I have been raising my daughter Emma and my granddaughter Lily as a single mother. Emma is now 24 and finally found happiness with her fiancé Jake. But our joy came after surviving something that no family should ever endure. 10 years ago, when Emma was just 14, my brother Marcus assaulted her during a family gathering. She became pregnant as a result, and our world fell apart overnight. Emma had to drop out of school temporarily while we navigated the trauma, the pregnancy, and the legal nightmare that followed. I fought tooth and nail to protect my daughter, but the family chose sides, and most of them sided with Marcus. My parents, Emma's grandparents, decided to forgive and forget. They believed Marcus when he claimed it was a misunderstanding that Emma had somehow led him on. The denial was so thick you could cut it with a knife. When I refused to let Marcus near Emma again, they accused me of being vindictive and unforgiving. The family split apart, and I found myself completely alone with a traumatized teenager and eventually a newborn baby. Emma gave birth to Lily when she was 15. We raised that little girl together, and Emma went back to school, finished her education, and slowly rebuilt her life through years of therapy and pure determination. She met Jake 3 years ago, and he loves both Emma and Lily unconditionally. He knows our story supports Emma completely and treats Lily like his own daughter. So when my mother called that afternoon while Emma and I were at the florist, I expected her to ask about wedding details or offer to help with decorations. Instead, she dropped a bomb that nearly knocked me off my feet. "Sabrina, honey, I need to talk to you about Marcus," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "He has changed so much over these years. He found God, joined a church, and has been doing community service. He wants to make amends with Emma and your father, and I think the wedding would be the perfect time for healing." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. "Mom, absolutely not. Marcus is never going to be around Emma or Lily again. We have been through this 1,000 times. But family is family, Sabrina. Emma needs to learn forgiveness. Holding on to anger like this is not healthy for anyone, especially not for a bride about to start a new life." The conversation ended with me hanging up on my own mother, something I had never done before. Emma looked at me with concern, knowing immediately that something was terribly wrong. When I explained what my mother had asked, Emma had her first panic attack in over 2 years. She collapsed right there in the flower shop, hyperventilating and sobbing uncontrollably. Jake arrived within minutes of my frantic phone call. When he learned what my parents were demanding, his face turned red with anger. He had never heard the complete details of what Marcus had done, only knowing that there was family drama and that Emma had Lily young. Learning that his future uncle-in-law had assaulted his fiancée when she was a child sent him into a rage I had never seen before. "How dare they ask this of you?" he said, holding Emma while she tried to calm down. "How dare they put this on her right before our wedding?" Emma looked up at both of us with tears streaming down her face. "Please do not let them ruin my day. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and I cannot handle having him there. I cannot even think about being in the same room with him." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how my own parents could be so blind and cruel. They were asking me to sacrifice my daughter's peace of mind for the sake of their comfort and their twisted idea of family unity. The phone calls started the next morning and did not stop for days. First, my father called with his usual authoritarian tone, demanding that I stop being stubborn and invite Marcus to the wedding. When I refused, he threatened to boycott the entire event and take my mother with him. "You are tearing this family apart, Sabrina. Marcus has paid his debt to society, found religion, and wants to make things right. The least you can do is give him a chance. Dad, he assaulted your 14-year-old granddaughter. There is no debt that can be paid for that, and there is no making it right. That was 10 years ago. People change. Forgiveness is a virtue, and Emma needs to learn it." The conversation ended with him hanging up on me this time. Within hours, the extended family campaign began. Aunts, uncles, and cousins started calling, texting, and even showing up at my house to lecture me about forgiveness and family loyalty. They painted me as the villain, the bitter sister who could not let go of the past. The financial pressure came next. My parents had promised to pay for half of the wedding, a significant amount that Jake and I were counting on. Now they threatened to withdraw their support unless Marcus received an invitation. The wedding was 6 weeks away, and suddenly we were facing the possibility of having to drastically downsize or postpone everything. Marcus began sending apology letters through other family members, carefully worded documents that managed to sound remorseful without actually taking responsibility for what he had done. The letters talked about God's forgiveness and second chances, but never acknowledged the specific harm he had caused Emma. Jake's family learned about the situation when his parents noticed how stressed and upset both Emma and I had become. When Jake explained what was happening, his father, who is a lawyer, immediately offered to help us obtain a restraining order against Marcus. His parents were horrified that anyone would ask the assault victim to sit through dinner with her attacker, let alone at her own wedding. "This is insane," Jake's mother said. "No one should have to endure this kind of emotional abuse, especially not Emma. She has been through enough." The support from Jake's family created an even bigger divide. Now it was not just about Marcus and the wedding, it was about two families with completely different values and priorities. My family saw Jake's family as outsiders who did not understand our dynamics, while Jake's family saw my family as enablers of abuse. Emma's mental state began deteriorating rapidly. The nightmares that had finally stopped after years of therapy came flooding back. She started having anxiety attacks multiple times a day, and wedding planning became a source of stress rather than joy. We increased her therapy sessions, but the damage was already being done. 10-year-old Lily, who had always been a bright and happy child, started asking questions about why everyone was fighting and why Grandma and Grandpa were being mean to Mommy. Emma and I tried to shield her from the conflict, but children pick up on everything, and the tension in our house was impossible to hide. I found myself losing sleep, losing weight, and questioning everything I thought I knew about right and wrong. Late at night, doubts crept in. Was I being too harsh? Was there some middle ground that could satisfy everyone? Should Emma just endure one evening for the sake of family peace? But every time I looked at my daughter's face, saw the fear in her eyes whenever Marcus's name was mentioned, I knew there could be no compromise. Some boundaries cannot be negotiated, and protecting Emma was more important than keeping everyone else comfortable. The breaking point came when Marcus showed up at my workplace 3 weeks before the wedding. I work as a nurse at a local hospital, and he somehow found out my schedule and cornered me in the parking lot after my shift ended. Seeing him face to face for the first time in 10 years was shocking. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes still held that manipulative gleam I remembered from our childhood. He had always been good at charming people when he wanted something. "Sabrina, please just hear me out," he said, blocking my path to my car. "I have changed. I have found Jesus, and I understand now how much pain I caused. I just want the chance to apologize to Emma and make things right. There is no making this right, Marcus. Stay away from my family. I am family too. I am her uncle and I love her. I made a mistake, but I was young and stupid. I have been in therapy, I go to church every week, and I volunteer with kids now. I would never hurt anyone again." The audacity of his words, the way he minimized what he had done as a mistake, filled me with rage. But I also saw something else in his eyes, something calculating. He was not there because he genuinely wanted to make amends. He was there because he wanted back into the family, and Emma's wedding represented acceptance and legitimacy. If you really cared about Emma's well-being, you would want her to be happy and peaceful on her wedding day. Your presence would destroy that. Maybe she needs to learn that life is not always comfortable. Maybe facing her fears would be good for her. That statement revealed everything I needed to know about Marcus's true character. He had not changed at all. He was still the same selfish person who put his own needs above everyone else's, including those of his victims. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus crossed the final line. Emma was at the venue for her final dress fitting, surrounded by her bridesmaids, and having what should have been one of the most magical moments of the preparation process. I was not there because I was at work, but Jake's sister called me frantically to come immediately. When I arrived at the bridal salon, I found Emma collapsed on the floor in her wedding dress, hyperventilating and sobbing hysterically. Marcus had somehow found out about the fitting and shown up demanding to speak with Emma about the wedding. When she saw him, she had a complete breakdown worse than anything I had witnessed since the original trauma. The sight of my daughter on the floor shaking and terrified in her beautiful white dress triggered something primal in me. All the doubt, all the pressure from family, all the attempts at keeping the peace evaporated in an instant. I knew with absolute clarity what I had to do. I helped Emma out of the dress and took her home, but not before confronting Marcus in the parking lot of the venue. Jake arrived just as I was letting loose 10 years of suppressed rage. "You selfish, sick man. Look what you have done to her. Look at the terror in her eyes. And you think you deserve forgiveness? You think you deserve a seat at her wedding. She is overreacting. I just wanted to talk to her to explain that I have changed. The fact that you cannot see how traumatizing your presence is for her proves that you have not changed at all. You are still the same person who puts your own needs above the well-being of others." Jake stepped between us before things escalated further, but I could see in his eyes that something had fundamentally shifted. He had witnessed firsthand the impact Marcus had on Emma, and any possibility of negotiation was over. That night, I made the decision to take complete control of the situation. No more reacting, no more defensive maneuvers. It was time to go on the offensive and protect my daughter the way I should have been doing all along. I called an emergency family meeting at my parents' house for the following Sunday. I told everyone that if they wanted to remain part of Emma's life, they needed to hear what I had to say. I spent days gathering documentation, and building an ironclad case for why Marcus needed to be permanently excluded from our lives. Jake and I arrived at my parents' house armed with medical records from Emma's pregnancy therapy notes, documenting her trauma police reports from the original incident and testimony from the bridal shop incident. I was done being defensive. It was time to present the facts and let everyone see the reality of what Marcus had done and continued to do. My parents, several aunts and uncles, and even some cousins were there. Marcus arrived with his new wife looking confident and ready to plead his case for redemption. He had no idea what was coming. I started by laying out the timeline of events from 10 years ago, reading directly from medical records and police reports. I shared details about Emma's pregnancy complications, her suicidal thoughts during those dark months, and the years of therapy required to help her function normally again. "This is not about forgiveness," I said, looking directly at my parents. "This is about safety and boundaries. Emma has every right to live her life without being forced to interact with the person who assaulted her." Marcus tried to interrupt, claiming that the records were exaggerated and that Emma had consented to their encounter. The moment those words left his mouth, the entire room went silent. Even my father, who had been defending Marcus for years, looked shocked. "She was 14 years old, Marcus. 14. There is no consent at 14, especially not with a 24-year-old family member in a position of authority." My grandmother, who had been quietly listening, started crying. For the first time, she seemed to understand the gravity of what had happened. The denial that had protected the family for so long was crumbling. Jake spoke up for the first time, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I love Emma, and I love Lily. I have seen firsthand what this trauma has done to them, and I have watched them heal and build a beautiful life despite it. I will not allow anyone to jeopardize their peace and safety, not even for family unity. The conversation became heated when Marcus accused me of brainwashing Emma against him and poisoning the family with lies. But when I presented the documentation from the recent bridal salon incident, including witness statements and photos of Emma's condition, even his supporters began to waver. My mother finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus, what you just said about Emma consenting. She was a child. Our baby was a child. The tide was turning, but Marcus was not going down without a fight. He accused Emma of seducing him, claimed she had been mature for her age, and insisted that he was the real victim because his life had been ruined by false accusations. That was the moment everything shifted. My father, who had been Marcus's biggest defender, stood up and told him to leave the house immediately. Several other family members followed suit, finally seeing Marcus for who he truly was. Marcus stormed out, making threats about legal action and claiming that we would regret excluding him. His wife followed behind him, looking embarrassed and confused. With Marcus gone, I presented my ultimatum to the remaining family members. Anyone who wanted to be part of Emma's life going forward needed to respect our boundaries completely. There would be no more discussions about forgiveness, no more pressure to include Marcus, and no more minimizing what had happened. Most of the family agreed, with several people apologizing for their previous stance. My mother broke down completely, begging for forgiveness and promising to support Emma unconditionally. My father remained quiet, but nodded his agreement. The next day, Jake's father sent Marcus a cease and desist letter, making it clear that any further contact with Emma, Lily, or me would result in legal action. We also filed for a restraining order, which was granted immediately given the documented history of harassment and abuse. With the family drama resolved, we faced the practical problem of the wedding finances. My parents offered to honor their financial commitment despite everything that had happened, but Jake and I decided to decline. We wanted our wedding to be completely independent of anyone who had enabled Marcus's behavior. Jake's family stepped up in a big way, offering to cover the costs that my parents had promised. More importantly, they suggested moving the wedding date up by 2 weeks to avoid any potential interference from Marcus. We changed the venue to a beautiful garden location that Jake's family had connections with, created a new guest list that included only people who truly supported Emma, and sent out new invitations with a clear message that this was a celebration of love and new beginnings. The morning of Emma's wedding dawned bright and clear, with none of the anxiety and fear that had plagued us for weeks. Emma woke up smiling for the first time since this whole ordeal began, and I knew we had made the right choice. Getting ready was pure joy. Emma looked absolutely radiant in her dress, with no trace of the trauma that had consumed her just weeks before. Lily, who was serving as junior bridesmaid, was excited and happy, helping with Emma's makeup and chattering about the party. Jake's family welcomed us with open arms, treating Emma like the daughter they had always wanted. His mother spent the morning helping with final preparations, and his father walked Emma down the aisle, since that honor had always been intended for me. But I wanted to be in the audience to watch my daughter's moment of happiness. My mother attended the wedding alone, having left my father at home to think about his choices. She spent most of the day apologizing and trying to make amends, but she also celebrated Emma's happiness genuinely and wholeheartedly. The ceremony itself was perfect. Emma glowed with happiness. Jake cried when he saw her walking down the aisle, and there was not a dry eye in the house. When the minister asked if anyone had objections to the marriage, the silence was peaceful instead of tense. Everyone there wanted Emma and Jake to be happy. During the reception, Emma gave a speech that brought everyone to tears. She thanked Jake for loving her unconditionally, thanked me for always protecting her, and thanked everyone present for choosing to support love over dysfunction. I learned that family is not just about blood, she said, looking directly at Jake's parents. It is about the people who show up for you, who protect you, and who celebrate your happiness instead of demanding that you sacrifice it for their comfort. The dancing, the laughter, and the celebration continued late into the night. Emma and Jake left for their honeymoon the next day, completely relaxed and happy, with no fear of Marcus showing up or family drama ruining their first days as a married couple. In the months that followed, our lives settled into a new normal. The restraining order kept Marcus away, and he eventually stopped trying to contact us. Some extended family members apologized and rebuilt their relationships with us, while others remained estranged, but I felt peace about those choices. Emma's mental health improved dramatically once the threat of Marcus was removed completely. She and Jake moved into a beautiful house together, with Lily having her own room and space to flourish. Emma went back to school to finish her degree, something she had put on hold to deal with the family crisis. I started dating again for the first time in years, finally feeling like I was worthy of happiness and partnership. Protecting Emma had been my full-time job for so long that I had forgotten about my own needs and desires. We established new family traditions that did not include toxic influences or people who minimized abuse. Holidays became peaceful celebrations instead of tense negotiations about who could attend and what topics were off-limits. Emma continued therapy, but now her sessions focused on building her future rather than just surviving her past. She and Jake started talking about having more children, something that had seemed impossible when she was still haunted by trauma. The relationship between Emma and me grew even stronger through this experience. She saw me fight for her in a way that proved my love was unconditional and fierce. I saw her courage in setting boundaries and choosing her own well-being over family expectations. Lily thrived in the stable, protective environment we had created. She started performing better in school, made new friends, and developed confidence that came from knowing she was safe and valued. Most importantly, we all learned that healing happens when you stop negotiating with people who refuse to respect your boundaries. For years, I had tried to manage everyone's feelings and find compromises that would keep the peace. But real peace only came when I prioritized Emma's safety and well-being above all else. The wedding marked a turning point, not just for Emma and Jake, but for our entire family. We learned that love means protecting people from harm, not exposing them to it for the sake of appearances. We learned that forgiveness does not require putting yourself back in danger, and that setting boundaries is an act of love, not hatred. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let harmful people back into your life. Real family protects each other, especially the vulnerable. And sometimes the family you choose becomes stronger than the family you were born into. True healing began the day I stopped trying to manage everyone else's feelings and focused solely on protecting my daughter's future. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting someone you love? Let me know in the comments below, and please hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their safety and well-being matter more than keeping toxic people comfortable. Thank you for watching, and may you always have the strength to protect the people you love, even when others try to convince you that boundaries are wrong. Your peace of mind is worth fighting for.